Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Seth and Jaron, and you're listening to the REtipster podcast. Today we're talking with somebody I've known for a while now, and I've wanted to get him on the show. His name is Travis King, and we actually go back a ways. We first traded emails back in 2014 when Travis had some early questions about the land investing business, and ever since then, this guy has become sort of a powerhouse land investor. He's introduced me to some really important people over the years, and he's the kind of guy who I go to when I have questions and want to hear his thoughts about what's working for him and that kind of thing. And Travis is also a land investing coach who helps people who want to focus on bigger deals and scaling things up, which we're going to get into as well. But we got a lot of good questions here for Travis. We're going to hear more about his story and how things are working for him. So, Travis, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
All right. Thanks, Seth. Thanks, Jaron. Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Hey, Seth.
Yeah.
Didn't you and me also meet in 2014? I feel like we did. It was somewhere around there.
Let's see. Was that the year? It might have been.
It might have been.
Know.
I think that's...
I'll have to look back at my emails and see when we first communicated.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's possible.
It's serendipitous.
That was a big year, apparently.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So Travis, why don't you just let us know, how did you first learn about the land business? What made you decide to jump into this and give it a shot?
Well, like a lot of people, I was in search of a better asset class than single family rentals. So at the time I was listening, like I said, it was late 2013. I was listening to a lot of Bigger Pockets podcasts as I was commuting, driving to my job. And some guy named Seth Williams came on there back in October of 2013 and was talking about, flipping land as a business model. And it just resonated with me. And then I started going down that rabbit hole. And at the time we were focused on single family rentals. And really, it's tough to cash flow to the level that you want to with single family rentals, buying one door at a time and then dealing with, vacancies, turnover. So it's just, a great long-term play. But I was at the time kind of, my goals or ambitions were to replace my job income, really. And I didn't see how I could do that. When I threw it on a spreadsheet, buying one door at a time every 2 years, it just wasn't going to work. So when I heard you talking about, flipping land as a business model, that's when I started researching it more.
Travis, I want to ask you if you could take yourself back to that point where you just heard about the land business, something that beginners or people who have never heard of flipping vacant land before run into is it sounds way too true, like good to be true, right? And I was wondering, like, what was your process with that? Because I was fortunately in house wholesaling, and the business models between house wholesaling and land are similar. So it wasn't a far jump for me, but like, I know for most people to look at a world where like it's normal to make 100% ROI in a deal, that kind of stuff, sounds too good to be true. So like, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was for sure. It's one of those things where you go, well, why isn't everybody doing this, right? If that really works. And you later realize that most of the courses, most of the business models focused on lower dollar properties. So the ROI you get excited about, but I recall telling a friend about, 500% ROI, 1,000% ROI. And we kind of had that conversation. Well, yeah, you could buy an item at a garage sale for $1 and sell it on eBay for $11. There's 1,000% ROI. So I really wasn't concerned with the ROI because that was kind of the marketing is ROI, but it's really more like, okay, so on a flip, I could make $2,000, $3,000, and have less than 10 man hours into it. And I can do that supposedly, 10, 20, 30 times a year on the side. So it got my interest. I was skeptical like everybody though, I'm at first because I'm like, why wouldn't everybody do it? Because you don't realize all the parts and pieces involved because the business model, the concept is very simple. But when you get going with it, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces, that's where you go, oh, okay, that's why everybody, isn't doing it. But yeah, I was a little skeptical at first. And I think that's why I was so slow to start, actively pulling lists and sending mail is I kind of was in that research, skeptic / research phase for several months. kind of just to test this out and then learn everything I could to kind of satisfy those, those skeptical questions I had.
Yeah. And those, it's interesting. I really like the point you're bringing up about the ROI, how like, it's not the whole picture.
It's
Like
not
it's
at all.
one thing to look at, but like, that's totally not the end goal necessarily. And I think for a lot of people, it makes sense, and it's probably even appropriate to some degree to start out with those really cheap deals that do have a high ROI, because it's, there's not as much risk. You can kind of cut your teeth on something where the stakes aren't as high. But I'm curious, like, at what point did you realize and start consciously pursuing deals that were bigger in dollar amount, but the ROI maybe wasn't that large? And how did you figure out, okay, this is the profile I want to go after? Was there any way that you got comfortable with, I don't know, the perceived risk, or just the bigger numbers that might seem kind of scary to most people?
Well, the thing was, I started out with $4,500 to play with. I was basically like, okay, I can lose this and, the world won't end, but that's all I've got to play with. So, you can't do massive takedown deals when you're working with that little amount. So for us, it was all about like you said, one small deal at a time, and then plowing the profits back in. And it was flip, flip, flip. And for me, I was kind of like, I wanted a systematic, repeatable approach. So as soon as I had that figured out, you're banging out 50 to 70 transactions a year the first couple of years. But then when you start doing the math, you go, yeah, this is a good second income. But we hit that I think we did 70 transactions one year, my wife and I. She works the business with me, and it was like, okay, this is the stress point, the stress test. If I want to make more, I'm going to have to do more transactions. And it was just too high touch. At the time we were doing self-closings with everything, and
That's a lot.
and listing everything ourselves, and like a lot of people do, getting started. But we were also trying to build up our own, war chest of funds. So I think we were limited by capital really a lot. So that, using our own money took us a while. So probably the first 2.5 years, we stayed focused on sub $10,000 properties. And every once in a while, a bigger one would sneak in there, but I wasn't targeting those properties. But yeah, after we had, it kind of pushed I think the key here is that I didn't quit my job. A week after this started working, or I did my first deal, I really looked at it like, hey, there's got to be a lot of overlap here. I want a lot of overlap, and I want to be able to plow all the profits back into the business to do bigger deals and more deals. And like you said, when we finally got to that point, we also started to leverage other people's money and get a capital partner, because I really felt limited with what I could target or mail, because it was like, hey, I'd heard, this only works with the cheaper properties. That's why it works, is because these individuals can't use realtors. No realtor wants to take that listing. There's not enough commission. So in my mind, based on all the podcasts and courses I had heard, this business model only worked because it was an inefficient market with these sub 20,000, sub 10,000 properties. Then I start, just the pain of self-closing and listing and talking to buyer leads. I was just like, I can't do this, and it came in a good time. I listed this 80-20 rule, 80-20 principle book, which I know you guys are both familiar with and fans of, but and I said, how can I apply this to our land investing, company? And so for 3 months, I used a time tracking app, and I really tagged every activity, like sending mail, pulling lists, talking to buyer leads, self-closing buy side, self-closing sell side. Anyway, so we went through and I looked at where all my time was spent. And I also looked at what I don't like to do, and I found a lot of our time was spent on self-closing on the both sides of the transaction, the buy and the sell, and then creating listings and talking to buyer leads. So we decided, okay, let's 80-20 our land business. So that's where we decided to move to a model where we used realtors and we used title companies on each side. And we could only do that by moving up, like you said, to the higher value property. You can't do that with the lower properties because there's not enough meat on the bone, So we moved up, and we started using some funding, started using some other people's money paired with our own. And let's say it worked, right? By that point, I had enough transactions under my belt. I knew the transaction life cycle. So there's not much work in a bigger deal than there is in a smaller deal. Maybe less, right, Jaron? Since you're
Yeah, to be
using,
honest.
realtors and title companies, maybe less, more risk with your own money, but there's not much work. So for us, it took us a couple of years because we needed to build up our own money. But we were also focused on seller financing. So most of our net worth, what was tied up in note portfolio, which wasn't liquid. So we used some capital funding and started going after bigger properties and leveraging realtors and title companies. And that's where I feel like for me, our business, took a turn. And I think it's also when we started enjoying the business more. When you're servicing, there's one point where we were self-servicing over 100 notes, and then listing all our own properties. And yes, we were making money, but it wasn't fun. You know what I mean? It wasn't fun anymore. It was a lot of, death by 1,000 paper cuts, I call it. I mean, it was just painful. So moving to the bigger stuff really kind of re-energized me about the business model and also proved out that this can be done at a higher price point.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I will say going up in price point is a huge 80-20 leverage point. Because even if we talk about the bell curve of competition, like you could be in the most competitive county in the most competitive state, and if you do north of 25 grand, all of a sudden you're the sandbox you're playing in is a lot quieter. Like it's just sure there's other investors and stuff that you'll run into, but it's not like that kind of south of 15 grand acquisition price, especially between kind of that like 5,000 to, sub 5,000 acquisition price. There's a lot of activity there. So there's that alone is one of the reasons why I'm a big proponent of it. If you can afford it, all things being equal, you just get a lot more done with less effort.
When a transaction moves the needle, I mean, if you're netting 10,000 plus, 10,000, 20,000 a deal, that can move the needle in your life, where it is 1,500, 2,500, is certainly helps, but
it's chump change, right?
It's disposable money. You know what I mean? It's extra money, but it's not like you're not going to build an empire. You're not going to quit your job. You know what I'm saying? If you're making $1,000 a transaction, if that's the goal. And I think that's really what it starts with. You go, what do I want to do with this? And for me, it was once I validated it, Seth, like you said, am I skeptic at first? Once I validated and it worked, then it was just about, okay, how do I get a hold of money? How big can this get and how fast can we get it there? Right. But yeah, I probably hung in the smaller stuff longer than I should, but I also really liked not having risk. And I like that wash, rinse, repeat, approach. I liked all those small bets and just stepping up the plate, hitting a single every time. I was really comfortable with that and probably stayed in there a little longer than I should have.
I do have a follow-up question for you, Travis, just on higher end properties. When I used to work at Simple Wholesaling, we would be buying property between, let's say, on average, 30 grand to 50 grand. And these were houses. And we would sometimes have, big wins, like we'd have big spreads, but I think probably our average was something like 6,500, 7 grand a property. Whereas I hear that a lot of land investors who do similar pricing, like 50 grand, 30 grand, they won't do a deal unless they're like doubling their money, at least as a general rule of thumb in terms of the list price. So if you buy it for 30, you're at least going to try and list it for 60. Is that your personal experience too? Is that kind of what you shoot for? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the offer price percent goes up as the market value goes up. So you might be picking up properties for 25, 35%, in the lower price points, but you get north of 50,000 market value, 50,000 to 150,000, you're probably paying, 40 to 55% of market value. So you do lose that ROI, right? Where you always have 100% ROI or a multiple, you're doubling your money, but we kind of have a rule of 55 personally in our own business where we don't exceed 55% of like list price or conservative market value. That's our own rule just to insulate ourselves from risk. And that was a rule of 50, 6 months to 12 months ago before, the seller's market right now. So we're offering 5 to 10% more than we did at every level right now. So, but yeah, we try to double, but it's really more about the margin or the net, what are we walking away with versus ROI? I'll gladly pay $60,000, on something I can sell for 125. And then I'm going to have some realtor costs, some closing costs. So it doesn't have to be, but that tends to be where it works out. We like to have a multiple or at least double, but really where we try to be at in our own business is netting, 20 to 40 grand a deal is kind of where we try to land.
So say you do have a property that you have conservatively estimated is worth, I don't know, $100,000. Does that mean when it comes time to sell with an agent, they're listing it at $100,000? Or is it like discounted at all from that? And then do you ever offer seller financing with this stuff? Or is it just cash?
Yeah. So at first, in this market, it depends when you're listening to this podcast, right? But in this market in December of 2021, we're in a seller's market. So the pros and cons of that are, the cons are when you're sending mail, it's a little harder to get a deal because their property values are going up. The property tax bill they're getting is bigger. They see houses going up. Everybody knows their property's worth a little more. They might view it as more of an asset than a liability, like they did even 2-3 years ago. But the flip side of that coin is if you're able to get an acquisition, the disposition is much easier. You don't have to market as hard or as heavy as we did our first years 1 to 5, let's say, right? So that's the good thing of being in the seller's market. They're selling quicker. So right now, yeah, we're listing at almost full market value, 98%, right? We just want to be right under, maybe, 2 to 5% under full market value we're currently listing for. And that might change. Like I say, if the market changes, we'll adjust. I've kind of always with land felt like I'm willing to take a cash offer at 80% of market value at the end of the day. I plan on that. I build that in when we're acquiring the properties. But in this market, we're getting full asking price right now on almost all of our properties. And then the second part of your question, the seller financing. So I kind of will take them as backup offers at first. So if we list something, we get an offer in the first 48, 72 hours on a property, it's a seller finance. We'll say sit on it, sit on it for a minute and let's see what else comes in. And we'll tell them, hey, the realtor will tell them the owner's currently only taking seller finance as backup offers. We'll circle back to you. And then some people say, okay, well, I could do it cash if you could knock 10 or 15% off. But yeah, at the end of the day, seller finance isn't our model. But we'll take it. It's just, there has to be like a 35, minimum 30, usually 35 to 50% down. And that's common or par for the course when you're dealing with MLS type properties, market values of 30 to 130. That buyer type or buyer pool has that to put down. And the sub $20,000, sub $10,000 property, is kind of where, when people hear seller financing, they think 99 down, 99 a month, and that's what a lot of the courses and a lot of people think when they hear seller financing. So when I say yes, we'll take it, it's more like, we've got one right now that's a 720. We took 30% down. It was 15 grand down on a $50,000 property. And then it's 726 a month payment for 5 years. So that's a seller finance, a deal that we would do. But we almost always say 35 to 50 down. But we prefer cash first.
Yeah. And so does ROI matter at all? Like, is that even something you're looking at, or is it more just like dollars in, dollars out?
ROI doesn't, like you said, we like to have a multiple. We like to double our money. But, if you start running financials on seller financing on not the cheaper stuff, but on property values, 30,000 to 80,000, that's kind of our sweet spot. We pull data at 25 or 30 up to 180 in market value when we pull our lists. But the reality is our sweet spot, the bulk of our sales is somewhere between, $40,000 and $80,000. That seems to be where people kind of, the buyer pool really contracts or shrinks when you get north of 100,000. So for us, we do like a multiple. Yeah, I like to double our money. But when you start looking at a note that's, 5 to 10 years long and it's 10% interest, on a $50,000 or $70,000 property, the interest income alone, is a lot over the years. So it's a whole different story than the seller financing, 0% interest, $99 a month, 99 down type thing. And you end up with a note, ideally, I mean, if you keep it, you could sell it to whatever. If you've got a 10% note that's 5 to 15 years in length, and you've gotten 35 to 50% down, it's a note that's going to pay you really well for a long time. And at the same time, you could sell it at any minute with those stats.
It's actually worth the trouble then. It's not some like little piddly source of income. I was like, wow, this was actually worth the effort and the hassle. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I feel like it is. And you have the title company or a loan servicing company servicing it anyway. That's the key there, is that you're not, chasing somebody for an updated debit or credit card or something. You've got somebody else servicing the loan.
And you are still using agents when you do seller financing, right? So you're letting the agents know, hey, if an offer comes in for seller financing, we're open to it under the right circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. We really say, hey, tell them the owner's taking backup offers at first. And sometimes that creates some motivation. And then we circle back if we test the market and it's cooler than we thought, then we'll certainly come back and work with them. But we try to push cash first. But if they've got a good down payment, and some will even be, they'll say, hey, I only need, I've got 50% down and want to do 24 months, but, $1,400 a month or something, they just don't have all the cash. So it really depends on the terms with the seller financing is looking at what's the monthly payment and how much down is it. But we're still paying the realtor full commission. We're paying them as if it's the same for the agent as a cash sale versus a seller finance sale.
So when you pay them, are you typically paying them out of the down payment? Or do you have to sometimes come out of pocket to pay them? If the down payment's not large enough to cover their commission?
Well, that's where, like I say, the getting 35 to 50% down. Most time that is what our offer price percentage, acquiring the property, is we're not paying more than that. So it's not often we dip into our own pocket. Sometimes it might take, 9 to 18 months to get your money back. If you paid 50% of market value on a higher, let's say $100,000 property, and you bought it for 50% of market value and you only get a 35% down, that might be the case. But it's more common for us. I'm kind of a fan of send more mail versus pay higher offer price percent. So we top grade. This one I was telling you about, we paid 13% of market value. So we bought it for $6,500. We sold it for $49,947, right?
That's
so
a sweet deal.
We bought it for $6,500. We sold it for $50,000. So, the other one, that the seller finance one was we bought for $5,184. We sold for $50,000 with 15 down. So those are the ones we're more inclined to take, seller financing. If we paid 50% of market value, I'd really try to push those cash just so we can bring our money back in and redeploy it. But yeah, we prefer to top grade really, rather than pay 50% on all these deals. I'd rather dedicate that extra 10,000 to 20,000 more units of direct mail, and see if I can't get some deals out of that than pay more.
Yeah, that your comment about, whether we paid, a small percentage of market value or a 50%. So like, are you sending out blind offers, and like, what would make you pay so much more versus so much less? Like, what determines that? Is that just part of your blind offer pricing process, or what goes into that?
Well, so we send out 3 different, types of letters, where I'll send out if there's a ton of variance in the county or the area and it's tough to price. We'll send out a letter of interest, that kind of a also known as a neutral letter. I'm not a huge fan, just because you have a huge response rate and everybody seems to want full market value. So I kind of moved to doing what I call a range offer, where I set a lower limit and upper limit, and that gives me some room. And the reality is that most our offers come in that range. So So if I know if it's a really homogeneous, like size properties, like in the Southwest, think of that. There's a lot of subdividing where everything's very square, very neat, and easy to price. Those might be more blind offers, or we do a lot of hyper targeting just at a subdivision level, where I've got one here in the Phoenix area where they go for about 100, 110 for a 1 acre lot. It's commutable to the Phoenix metro. Subdivision of less than 300 properties, right? So very small, but we would hyper target that and buy between 40 and 50 and then resell at 100. So that would be a blind offer one because they're close enough. But usually when we do a range offer, it's the range or what we pay is, and that's why it's kind of nice. You're not misleading anybody. You're saying, hey, we can pay between this lower limit and upper limit based on road access, property improvements, utilities, attributes nearby. So these are all things that we, do factor in when you give them that offer and they go, well, wait a minute, this is a lot closer to your lower limit, obviously, than your upper limit. And you're like, yeah, you didn't have septic, you didn't have a well, it's not fenced, it's not a paved asphalt road, it's not next to the lake, you can go fishing and water skiing, right? So it didn't have those attributes. That's why the offer came in here. So that's what I like with the range offer. And then there's times we would pay upper where, yeah, hey, it's great. It's a maintained county road. It's got power to it. There's a house every third or fourth lot has a house on it, so that's a situation where we would pay more if it has utilities and has great road access and it's near mountains or something like that. So we're happy to pay more because we know the realtor's going to be high on the property. And
so word on the street is that the whole concept of range offers originated with Travis King. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is word on the street.
So yes, the neutral there. So I was using blind offers and neutral letters. And really I was working with, you guys know, Max and Ryan over at Price, pretty well too. I was working with those guys I made a feature request for something when I pulled my data, I pulled my mailing list. I said, hey, when I pull that into my CRM, rather than bringing up the calculator when we're on the phone with the seller, I would like to know what an offer looks like at 35%, 40%, 45%, like all the way up in 5% increments. So, I'm telling Max and Ryan about it, and they go, oh, you mean like an offer at all increments? I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, an offer at all increments. So they added that feature to their data set when you pull it. So you can see what an offer would look like at 5, 10, 15, 20, all the way up to 95%. And after I had that, my intent was to pull that and for uploading it into REI Pebble, our CRM, and just to be able to have that in front of me when I'm talking to the seller and grant myself or somebody else the autonomy of saying, hey, you can go up 10% or down 10% of our original offer. That was kind of the intent of it. But then I'm looking at the mailing list, the data set one day, and I'm kind of looking at it, I'm like, man, all these properties are coming in between, what Price had as the 20% offer and a 50% offer. So I'm like, I can't price this subdivision. There's water, there's lots on the water, and then there's lots far away from the water. So there's a big variance. And I'm like, I'm not going to price these one by one. Let's just roll with this lower limit, upper limit, and just kind of called it a range offer and went with it. And then I kind of moved to that because it started, what I found is it set expectations. When people got the letter, instead of assuming they're going to call me and I'm going to give them a full value, market value offer like they do with a neutral letter, I've set those expectations. So I'm in the ballpark. If they're calling me back, they're motivated enough and I'm in the ballpark. So that's the range. That was the range offer. But at first, I kind of called it the priced range offer, PRYCD, right? It was the priced range offer. And then obviously you can do it with any data set. And then I just moved to a range offer. And then, Jesse and Kevin were willing to upload my template into the CRM there. And then I shared it with the community and everything,
Oh, sweet. So the range letter within Pebble it originates from you. That's awesome. I have a question though. One of the things that I think I've actually talked to Seth about this. One of the things, because I've never done a range offer campaign at all. but I would assume that people would just instantly go to the bottom number. So if you have like a range of, I don't know, let's just say for the sake of example, 10 to 20,000, they're probably, I mean, I think I misspoke that. I said lower, I meant higher. So they're probably like, I feel like the seller leads are going to call you and be like, yep, I'll take 20,000 for it, So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, so people obviously that's what gets them to call back is that upper limit. But keep in mind that upper limit, if as long as the market value that you're working off of, right, the estimated value is accurate, that's still only like I do a range of 20 to 50%. That's usually my range offer. So in the worst case, there you're only offering 50%. So you're not walking back an offer that you led with 80 or 90%. But like I say, in my range offer, that's a template in there. It says, our offer, the offer that we give you will depend on road access, property improvements, utilities, all of these things. So when we're valuing the property, sometimes we do pay the upper limit if it has all those, and then sometimes we go, no, well, here's the offer, and it's closer to the lower end. We also leverage, realtor opinion of values with all our properties now. So a lot of times I can come back to the seller and I'll have somebody say to me, look, I don't expect full value, but I think you valued it low. Here's what we need. And then I'll even say, well, let me share with you what the realtor thinks. So if you're saying you're willing to sell it for 40% of market value, determining an accurate market value is the first thing we have to do if we're basing a percent off of that. So people obviously some people want the higher, but you can justify it with all of that thing, road access, property improvements, utilities, all of those things factor in, and they do or they don't have them. And if they do, we will pay more. So that's why I'm comfortable with the range offer, because I'm not an incredible salesman. So for me, I feel like I'm leading with honesty and transparency. I'm saying, hey, we'll pay between this and this. And that's where the offer is going to come in, So it really sets expectations. You might have a lower response rate, or not might, you will have a lower response rate than like a neutral letter campaign. But you also don't have people, inflating your live answering call service, your Pat Live bill, by everybody that's calling in bought it between like 2000 to 2007 or something, and they overpaid and now they want to get back, So whenever I look at the data ahead of time, somebody calls in, I'll look at the purchase year and I'm like, okay, right, they're probably overpaid, now they want to get their money back. But yeah, people's eyes go to the higher value, and that's what gets the call back. But then when we actually review the property, that's where we lead with that and stand behind it,
Yeah. Something I've heard, us talk about several times in this conversation is what our offers are based on the market value. So I'm curious, how are you determining the market value, and how do you get confident with that? Especially when you talk about $100,000, like for somebody to, dig up 40 grand and put it on a property, that's a lot of money. Most people don't have that just sitting around. And even if they do get a money partner, it's still a lot of money. So, but it's all based on this assumption that you really understand what it's worth. So how do you really understand what it's worth? What do you use to figure that out?
Yeah, so we kind of weigh values, right? So, if you're doing a home remodel in your house, you wouldn't go with the first contractor. You would probably get 3 quotes. If you've ever done anything for a corporation or had any project managed, we'd get 3 quotes with every vendor we dealt with. And it wasn't because we thought the first one was dishonest. It was kind of because we didn't know what the bid would come in at, right? So we could stare and compare and take these 3 and do what. Great book, Principles by Ray Dalio, but he talks about a concept of triangulating. And to dumb it down and simplify, it's just really just getting 3 opinions from 3 sources you trust, right? So we kind of value the property ourselves, and then we weigh our own opinion based on how well we know that market. And then we always get 2 realtor opinion of values every time. So for any deal we do in our own business and any deal that we fund for like a student or client, we always would require they get 2 realtor opinion values from local realtors. And that's where you triangulate. It's like the 3 bids from 3 different contractors. We weigh those opinion of values, and might give some more weight than others. And then we arrive at a valuation that we're confident in. Because when you're left alone, making a decision in a vacuum, just guessing, essentially, Even in markets, I know well, I'll give you a good example where I had one that I thought was worth 30,000. I thought it was worth 30,000. I reached out to a realtor that we use, and he said, "Oh man, that area is hot right now. There's a lot of speculating. Let's list it at 50." And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't want 180 days on market, right? I want to sell this quickly. And he's like, "No, trust me. There's a lot of speculating. Let's just list it at this, and if we don't have much activity, we'll drop it to whatever you want 30 days from now." We got full price of 50, full asking price. He had local knowledge there that they announced they were building a smart city, hadn't done a thing, a shovel hadn't touched the ground, it was all speculating, but he was aware of that and knew that. So reaching out for that realtor's opinion value, even with my transaction history and number of properties I've comped, I was valuing it at 30, so I think that triangulating with other people that you trust and have local knowledge of the market, it really puts you in a position. And that's key when you move up in higher prices, because when you're off 10%, was a $10,000 property, it's $1,000. But if you're off 10% on a $100,000 property, yeah, that's 10 grand. So I think getting those realtor opinion of values is key.
So I will say that the longer I do the land business, the more and more I'm convinced that the most accurate way to get the answer to the market value question is land specialized real estate agents. Because I can't tell you how many times I've run into the same type of situation where, based on my knowledge, based on looking at solds and the data I have access to, it would be worth this, but it was substantially higher in value just because of insight information of being local to the market, or even the opposite, where it's like everything that I'm seeing says that it should be this, but this particular subdivision just is really tough. And unless it's like on the water or it's like a corner lot or whatever, things just don't sell there. And so I've had, I think agents save me from more bad deals than they've helped me sell good deals. But I mean, it's been absolutely incredible. I do have a follow-up question though. So for the listeners who do not use agents to sell their property, what would be your advice on them using agents still for determining market value without having the, I guess, sale of, hey, if you do work with me and you do this, then you're going to get the listing, right? Without that kind of dangling that carrot in front of them, I don't know how you would find somebody to be motivated to help you do due diligence and all that stuff. Do you have students that, like, as a part of your coaching program or stuff? I know we haven't really touched on that quite yet, but do you have coaching students that will reach out to an agent that they're not going to be listing, and do you have them pay? What's your thoughts?
No, so I don't. I tell people this: you're looking for eventual team members, right? Like these realtors, if you get a good, and I want to highlight that or focus on that perspective. You said land specialized agents. So when I say a realtor, there's a difference between a realtor selling, a home, $500,000 homes in a gated community or something, and a land agent. So that's key there. When you select an agent, they've got to know land. They've got to know land. But no,
how are you finding those people? Just out of curiosity. I know Jaren's got a good video in this, but I'm curious what your method is.
Ours is pretty. I mean, it's not that sophisticated in that we go to quite often we'll go to the Zillows, we'll go to Lands of America, and we'll search sold. A little for sale, but more because sometimes I told the student, go check out the site, see who's got listed property. And then he sent me a link, said, yeah, here's one. And I'm like, whoa, yeah, but let's look. It's 190 days on market. So this is an agent we don't want, right? If you want to know who not to pick, go to for sale and sort by longest listed, right? And so we're really looking at sold comps. We're looking at agents that have multiple sold comps in that immediate area. It is a great, quick, easy way to start, but there's also a number of, Rural Land Institute has a good list of, land agents. So yeah, you can find, typically we find them by searching sold sold listings in the immediate area, and then we see, how many days on market. And then also we reach out. We know that we're not going to get 100% response rate. So it's you might need to reach out to 3 for every 1 that actually responds to you. But again, they're starting that relationship off showing you with you. Are they responsive? Do they answer their phone live, or do they call back immediately or not? You're already getting a feel for how they're going to work for you if they were a realtor. But I don't have students use them as a comping tool, because I just think if you find one that will take a couple $100 a comp, that's great. But I don't think that's the way to go. And I also, the upside of paying for comps, we don't, but I know a number of people that do. The upside is that you usually get more than an email that's like, yeah, this feels like 100,000, probably list for 90. That's an email you get when you ask for a comp. If you pay for a comp, you quite often get a report. That is the upside of paying for it, is they feel like the output or deliverable they give you needs to be quality.
How much are people typically paying realtors for?
Anywhere from 50 to 50 to 200, I would say. I don't though. I just don't. We reach out to multiple agents and just ask. We let them know. I have a script, like for my coaching students, that I have a script that, like, of how the email to send or what to say, and just let them know you're actively investing in their area and you plan on doing several transactions that you'd potentially like to use them as a listing agent on. But first, you need the value on this one, what they think of it. So but I tell them, don't use people as a comping tool if you're just going to list it and sell it yourself. It's really bad. It's a great way to earn a bad reputation, So you can figure it out if you're in that price range where you're not going to use a realtor. If you're off a little bit, like I say, it's not that big a deal if you're off 10% and it's a $10,000 property. So you can usually value it yourself based on sold comps pretty easily. Where it gets tricky is the higher dollar properties, I feel like.
And if you have a relationship already established with the land specialized agents, more often than not, they'll happily take on those lower listed properties, just because for them it's a relationship, it's the long-term play. So I've had agents sell, I think the lowest property we listed, I think at 3,500, and they were happy to sell it for me because of the relationship. I did want to just throw in there for our listeners, my number one tip on land specialized agents is very similar to what Travis said. Go check out like their agent profile on Zillow or LandWatch or what have you. But I'll look at the ratio of land properties to other types of real estate, both on their listing and sold properties. And that is really telling, because if the majority, and I don't like literally factor it out or count it, but just at a kind of gut level, are there more land properties than other types of real estate? And if the answer is yes, then most likely, especially on the sold side, then most likely they're worth a call.
Well, and you could also go on like Lands of America and look at the broker directory is a good one to look at. The Rural Land Institute has a realtor land agent directory. So there's a number of resources if you want, but I also found people that are actively selling properties where you're looking to work is the best way.
Yeah, I actually I haven't used it myself yet, but I had a little demo of Price Boss 3.0 yesterday with Howard Zonder. And he was showing me, he created this new tool built into it where you can go to Lands of America, search for whatever you want, whatever zip code or state or county, property type, and whatever results come up there, you copy the URL and paste it into Price Boss. And there's a tab that will show you like the number one agent in terms of like quantity of listings. And I think it did something, I don't know if it was price or I don't think it was time on the market, which I thought, Travis, that was a really good point. But and it's not that it tells you like, this is the best one, but it at least shows you like, this is the number one player in terms of quantity of listings. So it's kind of a way to just, instead of clicking all over the place, it just shows you right there. Boom. Like, these are the biggest guys.
Cool. That's cool. I'm always looking for new tools to add to the tool belt.
Travis, I know like with these bigger properties we're talking about, so are you using your own cash at this point, or do you have money partners that you're continuing to work with? And if so, what kind of arrangement do you have? Is it like 50-50 or a different kind of split?
Yeah. We use our own money at this point, but keep in mind, we're 7-8 years into this, hundreds of transactions and 7 to 8 years into this. But yeah, we use a capital partner for a number of years. And then through coaching and consulting and helping people, you train somebody up on say, so here's how to do a campaign right, in my very, very subjective opinion, here's the right way to do a direct mail campaign. And I would help somebody execute a campaign, and then they would get a property, and they'd say, hey, I've got a signed offer for, let's say, 42,000, and it looks like it's worth 100,000, and I'm like, awesome, sounds good. And they're like, well, okay, I don't have 42,000. That's the problem, right? So it's like, well, good, you got it, you got the contract. He's like, it all worked, but there's just that small question of money, So it was really organic, but we started funding our own clients and our own students' deals, after coaching and training them to a point. We also have one where clients will get like sometimes you mail somebody and they go, hey, I've got 10 properties or 5 properties, a portfolio, right? And it's a little more than somebody wants to bite off, even if they have the capital, maybe they don't want to tie it up. So yeah, we actively fund, in addition to, landinvestingmastery.com, that's our coaching website. We also co-own freedomlandcapital.com, which is a formal entity just for funding, in the land space. So yeah, that's why I'm a big fan, like I say, of other people's money. We leveraged it, and it helped us explode our business to the point where now we can, kind of return the favor and do the same thing. So that's capital, something that hamstrings you. I mean, even when I was pulling data for years, it was like, I would put a ceiling on the market values. I pulled my list because I'm like, why even mail something over 50,000? How would I ever buy it, or 100,000? So it really limits you on record count and counties, on everything, if you've got to put a ceiling on what you can go after. But I would just tell people it's our approach is more like, and even me, that's how I work, is very relational, instead of there's a number of funders that are transactional and stuff. So you can just, if you get a big deal that's too big for you to take down a one-off, you can find funding, but really like view it as like a partnership. You're looking for a capital partner, is what I recommend. Find somebody that, you're kind of, it's joint venture agreements usually, but you're still in a way kind of going into business together if you plan to work with that individual a lot. And then also, build trust. Whoever you work with, build some trust. And once you get some transactions under your belt, revisit your split. I know Jared and I talked about this a little, where in the house world, nobody would ever ask for 50-50 split, right? Of course, you're dealing with $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 houses, So even when I started funding it, 50-50 just seemed crazy to me, to give up 50% of the transaction. So we'll do a number of things. Like right now, we'll even have clients say, well, can I just get an assignment fee? Will you pay me an assignment fee for it? I don't want to wait on the money to fund it. So we'll do assignment fees, we'll do funding. But I'm a big fan of, and I think I first read about it with Robert Kiyosaki, other people's money, and it just resonated. It made sense. And it really allowed us to kind of level up. I think if I hadn't taken advantage of that, we would have been trapped in that, I call the endless treadmill to nowhere, the flip, cheap properties. A lot of the same, and it can be a good second income, but you're never going to, build wealth if you're focusing on this lower end properties.
Well, yeah, you might have mentioned it, and I was just looking at something else, but so as somebody who has been on both the borrower or the active investor side and the funder side, it's like what is a good fair split? Or like what would determine whether it should be 50-50 or 30-70 or otherwise? Like, how do you look at that objectively?
I think when you offer price percent, so if somebody comes to you with a deal and they're offering 50-55%, already you're starting off without a multiple, so there's not as much to work with. So I think you have more to work with when people are getting deals under contract for 30-35% and stuff. There's more room there. But that's when we made the decision to start this. It was, hey, what's a split that's, because even when we use funding, it was kind of when, like you said, I have that perspective of being on both sides. And when we use it, you go, okay, I'm just going to use funding on the big deals that I can't take down myself, right? But you don't view it as a partnership. So when we started Freedom Land Capital with our partner, we said, my wife and I, we said, how do we make this so generous or that it makes sense for people to continue to use it? So what we landed on and are currently at is whatever the purchase price is of the property, we charge a 20% fee on that purchase price of the property. Okay, and that right away is going to get back, not the sales price, the purchase price that you have it under contract for. And then we start out with, your first 5 or 6 deals. It's a 70-30 split in the land investor's favor. And then after 5 or 6 deals, we move to an 80-20 split in the land investor's favor. That's after a 20% fee, though, on the purchase price. So you could be, 6, 7 deals in, you could be getting an 80-20 split on the net profits, after the 20% fee on the purchase price. So we felt like that was a number that was more generous than anybody else out there was offering. And it also would allow us to kind of set it up so that we're viewed as a partner. People would build us into their business and use us for every deal instead of just one deal here and there.
So I have a couple of questions to dive into that topic there, Travis. First, are you open to funding brand new investors to the land space, or do you want them to have a bit of a track record first? Because obviously you have the knowledge to underwrite the deal regardless of the borrower's experience or the partner's experience. The operator, I guess, is a better term.
Yeah, so we definitely prefer, intermediate and advanced investors because there's less, when the deal's brought to us, there's already been some due diligence performed. So our preference is, intermediate and advanced investors. That doesn't mean we'll turn other, beginners away. But that's kind of really who we would prefer to work with. So it's not, that we don't end up in that position of playing that, red light, green light, would you do this deal game. It's more of, by the time you came to us, you've got a signed purchase agreement, you've pulled comps, you've got a deal. That's so, and some new investors even have that approach. So as long as it's somebody where it's not, you're looking for thumbs up, thumbs down, it's a deal by the time you bring it. That's kind of who we like.
The other question that I have for you, how are you structuring the deal? Because I, up until this point, have had private money guys come in as mortgage first position lien holders on the property, and that actually creates a bottleneck when you start doing more volume that I wasn't aware of. There are these pesky things called mortgage payoffs, where if you want your private money lender to actually be passive, 100% not involved, that structure is not necessarily the most ideal. And there's a number of different ways to do it. Are you guys like taking title to the properties, or what's your structure?
So we take title. We take title to all the properties, and that allows us later, if it were to sell seller financing or something like that, we could just buy out the land investor. Us taking title is just cleaner and easier. And that's kind of evolved, from how we originally started, but that's what we're currently on, is just taking title.
Would you both be on title or exclusively your company?
Exclusively us. We have a JV agreement that would say that the land investor has equitable interest, and so there would be, and so it's pretty cool actually, so as you launch and we rolled out our agreement, we had one, I have one client who is also a coaching client and using funding. He was making some revisions and red lines, and he said, his day job, he's a contract negotiator. So we said, hey, we'll welcome the feedback and the gift, and we'll, the gift of feedback, and we'll improve the contract. We have another client, a very new one, who's an attorney. So from a land investor perspective, he said, hey, we want to make sure that the agreement's not one-sided, So we worked with him on revising the agreement so that the land investor feels protected, So yeah, it's neat. That's why it's cool. It's not something formal, like anything. We collaborate, work with our partners, and so yeah. So it's kind of funny. We start out going with a big contract and go, all right, let's get this really lean and simple, from 10 pages down to 3. And then now with all those, revisions, now we're probably back up to 7 or 10 pages. But it's got everything in there to make everybody feel good, about the deal. And that's where we're currently at, though, is we are on title, and that just seems to work easier with the title companies and disbursements, or if it sells seller financing.
Are there any kind of like limitations in your funding in terms of it has to sell within a certain time frame, limit on acquisition price, that kind of stuff?
Well, we usually have like, so that there's not a constant back and forth, we kind of try to set thresholds of, property could be price cut up to, 10% without, things. So we kind of have a marketing agreement that we send to the realtor that they know what they can and can't do. We'll fund a lot of portfolio deals too, not just one deals. But we'll also keep in mind, like right now, it's a year, 12 months, I think is what our contract is, 9 to 12 months. And there's considerations, where it's not like, all right, you hit 9 months, we're taking the property back. It's always, we own our own land investing business. I don't need another property to list. I don't want your land, right? I want to do a deal with you. We want to partner. So we're really not trying to grab the land. But there's some areas, we've got one in Idaho, right? There's areas where through the winter, there's going to be more days on market based on season. So we had initially launched with 6 months because we're aggressive and we push realtors and we get things sold. But then some clients, are a little uncomfortable with that. So based on client feedback, we moved that to 9 months. And then now I think we're at 12, So like I say, so everybody feels good about it. But that's something that definitely with coaching, there's a lot of synergy in it. And then you help somebody, get properties under contract. And if it's something they either don't want to use their own capital for or don't have the capital, it's like anything, you're solving a problem. It's nothing that we just launched. It's something people asked for and needed.
Yeah. I just had kind of going back a little ways, out of curiosity, when you start dealing with, intentionally going after bigger properties like this and not going after the little stuff, and when you're sending, whether it's blind offers or neutral offers or range offers, that kind of thing. Sorry, not neutral offers, neutral letters. Are there different expectations that you have, like a different response rate or a different close rate or just other nuances that like, okay, now you're dealing with a totally different subset of land. Like the normal expectations go out the window. This is how it works in this other ballpark. Anything come to mind on that?
Yeah, well, I think you start out with the most response rates are going to be a neutral letter. You're going to get the most response rate. So if you're building a database of leads you can work and follow up, that's probably it. But if you're wanting to convert, that's where we move to like a range offer and a blind offer. I think blind offers are wildly efficient. I just don't think there's anything out there as efficient as blind offers if they're priced accurately and intelligently. I think they're the most efficient thing. The challenge is as you scale your business and you send more mail, like for the first couple of years, I was sending like 1,500 letters, 2,000 letters a month. I can manually price every row, every property on there, and have a great conversion rate. But as we try to scale up our business and now we're, sending 80, 100, $120,000, 120,000 units, how do I manually price? How do I accurately, intelligently price that? So the blind offer scaling, pricing, like manually pricing blind offers doesn't scale if you're sending a ton of units. So that's kind of where I think you introduce the neutral letters or range offers that kind of allow you to spray and pray at a county level. And I really prefer, we just do most of our blind offers are at a subdivision or hyper targeted level and manually priced. That's what I call in coin, land sniping is at that subdivision level, manually priced, either blanket price or like by unit within the subdivision. So, and I think blind offers are the most efficient thing out there. That the challenge is the pricing takes so long. You can use like a priced kind of as the easy button and just know that, hey, if I send enough units, like we'll use priced and I'll know that, okay, every 10,000 letters I send with the blind offer pricing, I'm going to get a deal every 3,500 letters. If I manually price those, I'm probably going to get a deal every 1,500 letters, right? If I manually price it. So you get response rate, neutral letter, you're going to get the most responses, range offers, you're going to get less, and then blind offer, you're going to get even less than that. So that's kind of the response rate. And I feel like conversion rate has everything to do with offer price percent. So much of, I'll have people say, nobody opens these standard class ugly letters, right? I wouldn't send your letter, my letter looks terrible. And they'll say, nobody opens those, or nobody's opening my mail. Nobody's getting back to me. And I say, what are you offering? I said, well, 25%. And I said, well, offer 50%. And all of a sudden, the number of people that open these letters will skyrocket. So you have no idea if the letter's actually getting opened, right? But the reality is your response rate's certainly going to go up if you adjust your offer price percent. If you increase that, people are going to call back. So I feel like converting has a lot to do with offer price percent and how strong you or your acquisitions person are on the phone. Building that rapport and talking has a lot to do with conversion.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Do you do that a lot? Where you'll send blind offer? Because like a blind offer is like, this is the offer, whereas a range offer is like, it might be this high, but it might not. But in terms of going up to 50%, like, is that something you recommend often for a blind offer where you're like setting the line in the sand, or is that you reserve that for the range offer kind of thing?
No, I'll do a lot of like blind offers right now. A lot of our offers are landing around 40%. I mean, 37 to 42, 37 to 45. A lot of our blind offers are in that range in today's market, just in the seller's market at a price point of, $30,000 to $100,000 properties, somewhere around 40% plus or minus 5 seems to be the strike price right now.
Cool. Now, are you ever making changes or alterations or improvements or anything to these larger, higher end properties? Or is it just the typical buy it, do nothing, and resell it?
No, so the most we'll do is we kind of stumbled into subdividing, and I'll do minor land divisions. So when I say subdividing, I try to clarify to people, hey, we're not building sidewalks and jogging trails and developing, that's although you can make a lot of money with that, there's a lot of risk. You put out a lot of money and it takes a long time, So we do minor land divisions, which is usually 5 parcels or less. Is usually you take the parent parcel and you split it up into 5, 4, 3, or 2 children or child parcels. So we do a lot of that in northern Arizona specifically. So that's a play in the playbook that certainly 2 years ago, that was probably my favorite play. What was subdividing. Right now, it's more like portfolio takedowns, targeting, portfolio owners and trying to buy 10, 20 properties in one swoop. But yeah, so that's really, but no, we're not improving it right now at this point. We're still kind of working on that velocity, a lot of flipping, a little bit of subdividing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that probably has a lot to do with the subdividing piece, like what markets you're in and like how easy is it to subdivide? Can you just write it into the deed, or is it like this giant year-long process of approvals you got to go through and it changes a little bit?
It absolutely does. Is it reviewed at a city level or county level only? And yeah, so that's really it, is how slow is it going to be? Because already when you move from self-closing to closing with title, you've already added almost 30 days on the buy side and sell side, on the bookends, moving to that model. So if then you start adding, subdividing and things like that, you could tie up your money for a long time.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk a little bit about your the coaching that you do. So, like, who ideally do you help? Like, is it the beginner? Is it the intermediate, the advanced person? Like, when a person comes to you, what is it they're trying to figure out that you can help them solve?
Well, usually it seems like it's intermediate and advanced is usually who we cater mostly to. I've got it's a mixed bag. I've got a number of beginners, but usually it seems to be the intermediate investors is the bulk of it. And then advanced investors that seem to be attracted to my business model or what we're doing. And I think it's a lot of them have been through other programs and they're, 6 months or 12 months in. They've probably paid for some very high priced, coaching somewhere else, maybe haven't done a deal or have done a few deals, or they're focused on low dollar seller finance, properties. And then I think they just, kind of get oriented and then look at the numbers and go, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do 99 down, 99 a month, And so I think that seems to be the people are attracted to me. That are the advanced investors who have, been through multiple courses and are doing a lot of deals but are looking to like move up in market value, and say, hey, I've done 30 deals. I've got a client who done 70 deals when he came to me. So he already knew the model and was good at the model, but it was like, how do I shift from selling, buying and selling sub $10,000 properties, to doing, $30,000, $40,000 properties. So that seems to be who's attracted is the intermediate and advanced investor. But I also feel like, because I was a beginner once too, right? So I always feel like the most I can distill down into, and transfer that knowledge, I'll certainly share it with anybody. But
yeah, there's I think a lot of people fall into that boat where like they get the business, they've been able to prove the concept in themselves, like it's working, but they're kind of like burning out. Like it's either getting boring or like it's just not. It's kind of like we talked about earlier. Like it's not a life-changing amount of money. It's like yeah, it's nice to have a couple $1,000, but it's not like $40,000. It's, and I think there's a big need and desire for a lot of people who want to level up and understand, like, okay, how do we play with the big boys? So, is that kind of like what you?
yeah, a lot of them, a lot of people have those golden handcuffs. There's a lot of individuals, making six figures in their day job. So it's tough to replace that kind of income, so especially flipping cheap properties. So I think people get 2-3 years into it and realize, hey, I could be doing this forever, hustling and working after hours and on this side business thing. But how do I take this side business to be a full-time business? And I mean, you have two decisions. Either you can do more deals at your current rate, way more deals, or bigger deals, So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that go, okay, this worked. I proved out the concept, but now I'm ready, to make 10,000 minimum a transaction or something.
Are there any kind of qualifiers that you look for with coaching students? Like if somebody were to reach out to you from today's podcast and they were interested in exploring the possibility of coaching with you, what would you look for as, kind of the preferred character qualities?
Well, I think you gotta be willing to fall in line and follow the process. How I teach is very systematic, and it's my business model. It's our business model that my wife and I use in our own. I'm sharing that, right? So I think the challenge is some people will see value in parts and then go, well, if we just adjust this or tweak that or maybe this, I go, well, if you came to me, why don't you learn from me? Try it my way. And then we'll see some success. Then you're welcome to make any adjustments you want, right, on your own. But while we're working together, if I tell you you're going to get a deal that'll make you 10 or 20,000 every 3,000 letters, you've got to follow you can't be cold calling or sending texts if I'm telling you to send direct mail. So I think somebody that's willing to follow the process and buys into it, because you can't get those predictable results if somebody's not willing to follow your systematic approach. So I think that's the key thing is this, hey, are you a know-it-all or are you a learn-it-all? Because I like to work with learn-it-all, I choose attitude over aptitude all day long, so are you a go-giver and got a positive attitude and you want to learn? That's the type of individual I want to work with, not somebody that comes in, reading me their resume, of all their experience that they've done somewhere else, and then wants to change or adjust and do it a little different. You go, well, I don't know what the results will be if we switch this up. So let's just follow what I'm teaching, and do some deals, and I can get you the results that I know I get for myself and other clients. And then you can do anything you want. But I think that's the same with any course, probably, right, Jared? Seth, is you can give all the information, but if somebody skips steps or goes a different route on that decision tree, you can't promise they're going to get those results that they would have if they'd followed your approach.
Yeah, and there's a lot of opportunities to do that too. Like it doesn't take a whole lot of variation on the process to like totally screw it up or bring them to a different place. So I can see how, I think it's where a coach comes into play. It's kind of just keeping a person on track and making sure like, no, do this, and this, and this.
Yeah, I think accountability is the key part of it. That's it. People, you trial and error by yourself or accountability, and kind of distilled wisdom or knowledge or kind of your two choices, right?
And sanity checks too. I think there's a lot of value in having just somebody who understands land in your corner who can be like, hey, this is a good deal. You're good. You got this. That actually goes a long way.
And sometimes, yeah, you'll say, well, hey, that realtor, I don't like their opinion, or I disagree, or I've heard that before, but let's get a different one. Whereas somebody might, if they're new, especially, take that as gospel and go, well, the realtor said this. And you go, okay, well, we weigh that opinion, but maybe not so much, right, in this situation. So sometimes, yeah, just being able to tell somebody like, yeah, you're good. Or, I had a client who I told him, after we get 14,000 letters out, here's what we can expect. We should have 4 deals that are all net 10 to net 20 deals, and about letter 7,000, he called me a little concerned. Hey, we haven't got these yet. And I said, well, that's the thing I can't tell you. I don't know if these 4 deals are in your first 7,000 letters or your last 7,000, but stay the course and let's, let's revisit this. And sure enough, by the end of the 14,000 letters, we're right at that spot. We're right at 3 or 4 deals that we're going to bring through escrow. But yeah, you've got to get enough, whether it's mail or calling or however your method is. Ours is direct mail, but you've got to get enough offers, in the universe to hit those acceptance rate and conversion rates. So I think that's that's really the key there. But as people along the way get discouraged, and who's to say if when I started and Seth wasn't willing to respond to my questions, when I had reached out to him about it, if I would have just gave up. And who's to say if I didn't have some traction in my first 1 or 2 campaigns that I wouldn't have given up, right? So you're fragile. You're fragile,
Yeah,
and especially in the beginning, So I think having somebody to let you know, hey, you're fine, you're doing good, you're all right, stick with it, and then maybe let's iterate, let's adjust or tweak this. I think that's the key, with it.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned your client that is getting apprehensive on the 7,000 units of mail, because I without fail, it's almost not everybody, but almost every client at some point when the mail first drops, it's like typically it's like all the yelling and not motivated people, and then it's like people who want to negotiate, and then it's people who like want to do a deal. Like it's not always that way, but in terms of kind of high level rule of thumbs, that's like the general wave that I've seen in the business. And so they'll get a bunch of people that call that are like not motivated, and they'll be just like, I don't know if this works, and you just like set them at ease. It's, hey man, this is normal.
Yeah, I still remember my first call back from a seller. I probably had the honoriest seller I've ever spoke to in 8 years of doing this. Was my first ever call back on my first campaign, and I was like, "This is terrible. I can't do this." So yeah, it's you forget that though when you get farther along in your journey, right? You forget some of those concerns, that you had in the beginning.
Man, you're sending me down memory lane. I'll spare it for the sake of time, but man, I got a lot of funny stories of me talking to motivated sellers.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been paying for a consultant in the self-storage space over the past 6 months or so, and working on this project it's biggest thing I've ever done. I can't tell you how many times I've looked back at the numbers to just try to like reanalyze it and look at it from every possible angle. And like, no matter what I do, there's always this element of uncertainty in here. Like, what if this is wrong? What if I made the wrong assumption here? What if this goes sideways? What if the economy changes? All this stuff. And I think it was like probably about a month ago, I was talking to the consultant, and like the thing that ultimately got me to say like, yes, let's do it versus nope, put it on the shelf, is just asking him like, put yourself in my shoes. Like, you know everything I know about this deal. Would you do this deal? Like, what would you do? And just hearing him say like, yeah, I would do this deal. Like, that's all I needed to hear. I just need somebody to make me feel okay about it, especially somebody who's never done it before. And that can go a long way.
I think when you enter any space, you look for that. You go, okay, who are the key players? Who are the subject matter experts here, right? That's what I do. And then you go, and who do I resonate or relate to, of those? I think that's what you've got to do, like you said, because you can accomplish the same results, on your own, but you can take somebody else's distilled wisdom, and if you can, exchange money for that value or wisdom, right? That transfer. And what's the ROI on that? I even look back at the courses I bought when I got started in this. Imagine the ROI, on paying like $1,500 for a course, and then ended up making $1 million from that. What's that knowledge that you applied? So I think that's it. Like you said, it's a $2 million deal you're talking about doing, Seth, right? Regardless of what the consulting fee is, it's just a drop in the bucket, in comparison to the knowledge you'll gain and potentially the equity you'll capture.
Yeah, and not to mention like future deals, and even if this one doesn't pan out for some reason, like it's permanent knowledge you have now that you can take with you.
That's what I look like. You can those are transferable skills too. So it's like anything. It took me a long time to learn that too. And this isn't a pitch on coaching. It's just anything in any type of self-development or self-improvement. I feel like that is your best investment, because you take that with you, regardless of if that employer or lets you go or whatever happens. Man, any investment in yourself and any type of self-improvement or self-education is going to give you the best ROI of anything, because you take that with you. So yeah, I'm huge, but I used to look at that as, and it's understandable when if your budget doesn't allow for that, you feel like your budget doesn't allow for that self-investment. But at the same time, I remember viewing any type of self-improvement or self-education as an expense, and not an investment. And it's taken me 4 or 5 years, and then reading numerous business books, being around high-level people, to understand now, to view it as an investment, and quite often what people don't realize too, and I've come to find, is you don't just get that consulting. Like, you probably are going to tap into this guy's connections, his network, right? You're probably going to get access to some of his resources and his connections as well.
Case in point, right? Like if somebody was working with me and they were a brand new beginner, and I referred them to you for funding, for example, you're more likely to pay attention to them despite their lack of experience because of our relationship, right? And whereas if they were to just reach out to you without having that investment in coaching with me, like it may be a toss up as to whether or not you'd work with them, right? Because again, it boils down to their experience and their competence and all that. So yeah, like I think it's huge that I think if there are a number of different ways to kind of move up the social ladder in multiple different, kind of spaces in life, but one of the most efficient is just pay to get there through coaching and investing and the capacity to rub elbows with influencers in the space.
Yep, 100% agree. Yeah.
So, Travis, if people want to find out more about coaching and the kind of stuff you have to offer, what website should they be going to?
Right. So you can go to landinvestingmastery.com. And from there, you'll see, when you get there, you'll see that I do group coaching. I do one-on-one coaching, and just recently launched a mastermind also that is going to cover advanced, one training a month with the mastermind that covers advanced strategies like portfolio takedowns, minor land subdividing, seller financing done right. There's a number of advanced strategies there that'll really appeal to people who have been in the space a while.
That's the group I need to be a part of right there. That stuff's
it's just the portfolio takedown one is something nobody's teaching, and it's that one is going to be fantastic. So
you and what's his name, Mike Marshall. I don't know if you've ever hung out with him at all, but you guys are like at least in my world, kind of the cutting edge voices of all those kind of like niche strategies within land.
There's so many directions you can go. That's the incredible thing. People think it's only just flipping cheap property, but there's so many plays or so many directions you can go with it. Yeah, I've heard great things about Mike. Yeah, absolutely.
Mike Marshall was in our office hours last month, and he just like we kind of did kind of a quasi live interview, and it was really awesome. He just is like going through the conversation, and he just like mic drops this exact method of how to find underutilized properties. He's like, you go to data tree and you select like commercial zoning, and then you have the land use be residential, and that's underutilized. And it's like, what? How, like it was so awesome.
It's exactly what the mastermind, what I'll do is how to prospect for portfolio owners, how to specifically target those, things like that we cover in the mastermind. But that's a good one. And then, I do usually twice a year, I'll do a group coaching, Seth, where it's a live training, 12 sessions of live training. And it's what I call, acquisitions mastery, because the whole thing is centered on, a lot of the courses, cover everything A to Z, on the acquisitions, the marketing, the dispositions, and really all I focus on is 100% on acquisition. So it's 12 live trainings on that. That's what the group is. And then one-on-one is really just catered to where are you at, in your land business, because people have different needs, so it's not a factory, that's the thing. I'll just say we're not a factory. We're a kind of a boutique, agency where it's completely focused on results, getting people results and a smaller number of people. And really the only limitation is time. It's me. I'm screen sharing. I'm teaching you how to use the plays we use in our own business, so that's really the only challenge on my end, is sometimes having to have a waiting list. You want to be able to help everybody, but at the same time, I want to enjoy this. I want to make an impact. I want this to be fulfilling, but at the same time, hey, I've got a wife and 3 active kids that I want to spend a lot of time with, and that's why we're doing all of this. Is for family and to have that time. So I'm real mindful of not overloading myself to where it feels like a job. So but that's really landinvestingmastery.com. They can check out what I've got to offer.
Awesome. And if you guys want to check it out, just be sure to mention, a coupon code, Seth, or just mention that you came from REtipster and you can get some kind of a discount.
Absolutely. Yeah. So use the checkout on anything, anything that the mastermind, on group coaching or a one-on-one coaching, we will give you a significant discount if you use the coupon code Seth, and that's just going to, allow us kind of to track all the listeners that came via this podcast. But happy to do that, Seth. Like I say, I wouldn't even be doing this if I hadn't heard you on a podcast 7-8 years ago. So definitely a lot of gratitude there, and it was the genesis. That was the moment. That was kind of the spark, when I first heard about this. So without any of that, we wouldn't be doing any of this.
That's really cool. No, I'm honored that I played any role at any point, and I'm really glad I saw your email and responded to it, because it's really cool to see where you've gone, and I take total credit for everything that you've done. If it weren't for me,
and I want 50%, right?
Yeah. So pay up.
Pay up.
Awesome. Thanks again, Travis, for coming on the show. It's been awesome to talk to you. Appreciate your friendship and just being a good person to know in the industry. Again, you guys know how to reach out to Travis and how to learn more about his stuff. I'm going to include links to everything we talked about, including his websites, in the show notes at retipster.com/122, because this is episode 122. And Travis, thanks again. And just keep up the good work with everything you're doing.
Excellent. Thanks, Seth. Thanks, Jared. Hey, appreciate you guys.
Yep, you bet. Thanks, man. All righty, folks. There we go. That was our interview with Travis. As always, great to talk to him. Has a lot of great ideas. It's really cool to see somebody on his level who is just, doing things that a lot of people either aren't doing or are too scared to do or haven't thought to do. And he seems like one of these, somebody worth paying attention to for sure, just because he's got a lot of innovative ways to approach this. But did you have anything that jumped out to you, Jaron?
I mean, just so much of 80-20 is just like, I might as well get 80-20 like tattooed on my forehead or something, I that principle, without question, has been one of the most influential, just principles that unlocked a lot and continues to unlock more and more and more. And the stuff, just the way that he approaches things that we don't even think about, how many times have I bought a package deal from, an investor that had other properties, but I didn't follow up with them. Like, and if you were to like target those, what he's calling portfolio owners, like genius, and just all those things that I just think that learning to hone the skill set of identifying 80-20 leverage points every day, all day, like just obsessing over that is I think a key principle to success. I mean, you can just tell that that's what he does. He just constantly, where's the leverage point? Where's the leverage point? And I hope to be that way too. At least that's what I aspire to be like. So I really enjoyed this episode. I like Travis a lot.
I don't think we've talked about this, but, and if we did, maybe we'll just talk about it again. But question is, what criteria do you use to determine whether something is true?
That's a really interesting question.
Like, how do you know what truth is really in this world?
Gosh, man, that kind of question you got to give somebody before we get on air. Like I got to think about that one. That one's deep.
I think like the truth is a complicated thing. And a lot of times I think there are absolute truths and things that like everybody, no matter who you are, can agree on, like the law of gravity, just obviously it's there. You drop something and it falls to the ground. But a lot of things in life, whether it's like your creed or your political belief or I don't know, all kinds of stuff, just beliefs and biases about the world and life and people. A lot of it, I don't know, like there is no objective thing you can point to say, yes, this is something we can all agree on. And that's why it's true. Like ultimately you got to have faith in something or basically you have to be able to believe something you can't prove. So it's always interesting to hear like, so you say this thing as though it's an objective truth. Why do you say that? To what authority do you appeal to? How do you know that's accurate?
I think a large portion, and it's not always perfect because there's going to be outliers in this, but I'd probably say the bulk of my assessment of truth is the results and the fruit. So if I drop something and it drops, the fact that I can see with my eyes and experience gravity proves that gravity is real. I think, when it comes to like more emotional or spiritual or psychological truth, it's like love. That's kind of less concrete. But you can know it's true based on the fruit that it produces. So if somebody says, I love you, but they're like beating you every time they see you, that's probably not love, right? Because obviously that's the fruit's not there. But if somebody doesn't even say they love you, but then like it's very evident that they sacrifice for you day in and day out, and they like show up and they're always there for you and what have you. That fruit speaks to the fact that the evidence is there, that love is there, or that love is true, right? So, I think that for me, that's probably the bulk of it. There are going to be some outliers though, where I don't have evidence to support the truth, but I just know that, and I can't think of a good example, but I think that there's going to be circumstances where that would pop up. So I'd say 80% probably evidence-based, experiential-based, fruit-based.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because even that, like, I could send out a direct mail campaign to a certain county using a certain criteria, and it flops. And I could say, well, based on that fruit, direct mail doesn't work in this county. It's like, well, it's not that simple. It's one of those things where like, I don't know that you really can know truth. You can probably get pretty close to it and narrow it down based on your experience again. But it's like the second you open your mouth and make a statement and stake a claim on something as being a fact, like you probably don't definitively know that. It's just like probably based on what we've seen. So I just think it's interesting because like so much of life, or like anybody who like states their opinion about something, like there's a lot of assumptions about truth going into that they may not necessarily know. And they may even contradict themselves at some point. And I don't know, you even hear somebody say like, oh yeah, like that guy over there, like he's a good guy, or I'm a good person, or it's like, okay, based on what? Like, how do you define good? And is there one objective measurement that we can all agree on in terms of what good is? You know, like Hitler would have said what he did was great for Germany. He cleaned up the country, you know? So it's like, I don't know, it's, but I do think it's really interesting and probably important for everybody to think about, like, where do you draw your basis of truth from? And not that you're going to get an answer in terms of like, oh yeah, that's the correct thing to do, but just maybe questioning yourself about like, should I be? Like, is there other things I should be entertaining or thinking about? Yeah. So.
That was deep. That was a good one.
Well, again, thanks to Travis for coming on the show. And if you guys want to check out the show notes, retipster.com/122. You can check out his website as well, landinvestingmastery.com. And we actually have a new thing we've been putting together called the REtipster Certified Coaches. And you can find this at retipster.com/coaching. And you're going to find Travis there. You're going to find Jaron there, and possibly other people there in the future. The idea behind this is coaching is something that it's just not something that I feel like I want to spend my time on. I don't even know that I'm necessarily that gifted at one-on-one coaching and that kind of thing for a number of different reasons. But there's other people who are. And I want to like make it easier for people to find the people that I believe in anyway. Not that I'm the ultimate authority on that, but just, you know, these are people that I know and I understand what they're teaching. And it doesn't mean we would always agree on every possible thing, but I at least see alignment there. And I trust them to, you know, deliver a good service and, you know, charge a decent, fair price and that kind of thing. So if you guys are ever interested in that, retipster.com/coaching, and you can see the REtipster certified coaches. So, but yeah, again, you guys know where to find the show notes. And if you're listening to this on your phone, go ahead and text the word free, FREE, to the number 33777. And you can stay up to date on all the stuff going on in our REtipster world. So thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys again in the next episode.